guys, Heather here. So in today's video, I want to talk about what endometriosis is and kind of explain like what I deal with, share my story of my endometriosis journey. So if you enjoy this type of content, give me a like, subscribe to the channel, be sure to hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when I upload my next video. But today I want to talk about endometriosis, what it is exactly, what are the symptoms of it, is there a cure, what are the treatment plans, and just to kind of share my own story with this horrible, horrible condition. I was diagnosed with stage 1 endometriosis in 2021, but I believe that I have suffered from it probably my whole life. I started out as a teenager having extremely painful periods. And I'll get more into my story, but first I want to kind of explain like what endometriosis is. And if you see me reading off of a script or whatever, it's because I have a lot of notes and I don't want to leave anything out. I don't always have the best memory because I have ADHD as well. So I'm going to be looking off to the side, reading from my notes throughout this video. So what is endometriosis? So endometriosis is a disorder in which tissue that is similar to the inside lining of the uterus. A lot of people think it is the same tissue. It is not, but it looks like the same tissue. It is very similar to the inside of your uterus, but instead of it growing on the inside of your uterus, it grows on the outside of your uterus. And it can grow anywhere in your body. I've heard people that had it in their brain, people that have had it in their lungs even. Luckily, as far as I know, I don't have it in those areas of my body. For the most part, endometriosis is going to be found in your pelvic region. That's generally where it grows, but it does grow in other parts of your body. Just keep that in mind. But basically, it's tissue that is similar to the inside lining of your uterus, but it grows on the outside of the uterus. And it is not the same thing, but it's similar to it. So that's why if doctors don't know what they're looking for and they're not trained in that area, then they're going to not recognize it because it is so similar. With endometriosis, deposits of tissue that act just like the tissue lining the uterus develop outside the uterus. This tissue thickens, breaks down, and it bleeds with each period. But the blood has no way to leave the body and it becomes trapped. So, can you just imagine that? You have a period, you're already bleeding, and then on top of that, you have a condition where this tissue thickens, it breaks down, and it bleeds as well, and at the same time as you're bleeding from your period. So, the bleeding often is super heavy for a lot of people. Personally, mine are extremely heavy. When I had my first surgery in 2021, it kind of toned down on that. So I was having like a normal period. But now, since it's been like 3 or 4 years since my first surgery, I'm starting to get that really heavy bleeding again. So you're probably wondering, what are exactly the symptoms of endometriosis? So I'm going to name off a few symptoms, and then a little bit later, I'm going to share with you guys what my personal symptoms were. So what are the symptoms of endometriosis? The number one thing is that people that have endometriosis, or I should say women that have endometriosis in general, is that you're going to have painful periods. That's like one of the number one signs of endometriosis is the painful periods. And that's what kind of gives everything away. So there may be heavy bleeding or pain when you're being intimate with your partner, or when you're having a bowel movement or urinating. Having trouble getting pregnant is also a very common sign with endometriosis. I'm personally dealing with that and have been dealing with that for almost 13 years now. And then a few other symptoms that you might experience as someone who has endometriosis is pain in the lower stomach, pain in your low back, pelvic pain, rectum pain, and pain in other private areas. Abnormal periods, heavy periods, which I also mentioned, very, very painful periods, spotting in between your cycles, which that's one thing I forgot to write down, but that was one thing that I was dealing with a lot. It was a lot of like, I think they call it mid-cycle spotting, constipation, nausea, stomach fullness, so feeling that your stomach just feels really heavy and full, cramping, and of course, like I said, infertility. You either have trouble getting pregnant or endo has completely destroyed your organs to the point that you can't get pregnant. Like, it's impossible. So what are the treatments of endometriosis? So the main treatment that a lot of doctors recommend is actually hormone therapy. So like birth control pill, which personally to me doesn't really make sense because of the I can't think of the word right now. There's something in birth control pills that supposedly, and they don't know for sure, but people that have endometriosis, estrogen, they have a very high amount of estrogen and it worsens the symptoms. And they believe possibly the reason of what causes endometriosis is from high levels of estrogen in the body. However, they don't really know. Like a long time ago, they believed that what caused endometriosis was what they called retrograde menstruation, which is basically where it starts to, you start to bleed and then it just kind of doesn't come out of the body and then it just kind of backtracks back up into the uterus, I guess. Something like that. I don't know exactly, but they believe that was the cause like a long time ago. But then apparently a lot of articles are saying that's been debunked and that is not necessarily true. And they really don't know what causes endometriosis. And there are so many women out there that struggle with this condition. It's actually very common. Another thing is pain medication, but I know that doesn't always work. There's times where my periods have been so severe, like the cramping has been so severe that hydrocodone doesn't even touch it. Like there's times I would take 2 hydrocodone, which is an opiate, and it did not work for me. Like it didn't even touch the pain at all. And then another way of treating endometriosis, which I am planning to have in April, it will be my second surgery, and that is a laparoscopy surgery to remove endometriosis, which can help with, possibly can help with your fertility problems. It also can help in cases of very severe pain. One of the reasons why I'm having it done again, because my pain is getting a lot worse again. And changing your diet, I was told by one of my doctors, could help with endometriosis, because endometriosis, due to the tissue breaking down and bleeding within your body and not being able to like escape and being trapped, what happens is it causes an inflammatory response, and your body is literally full of inflammation. And so if you're doing a anti-inflammatory diet, then it makes sense that would help lower your pain, but none of these things is going to cure your endometriosis. And that's the next thing I want to talk about, is I absolutely hate when people say, oh, I had a hysterectomy and it cured mine. Or why can't you just have a hysterectomy? Won't that cure it? And I'm here to tell you guys, and any doctor is going to pretty much tell you the same thing, is that no, a hysterectomy is not a cure for endometriosis, and here's why. Endometriosis, as I explained at the beginning of this video, is a condition where the tissue that is similar to the lining of the inside of your uterus grows outside of the uterus, outside of the womb, in places it doesn't belong. So why would a hysterectomy cure your endometriosis if that in fact is what you have? Because that just doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, if the condition was in the uterus and you go and you remove the uterus, then yeah, of course, that condition is going to be cured because you're removing it from the body. But it doesn't work that way because endo grows outside of the uterus. So removing the uterus does not cure endometriosis. Now, however, a hysterectomy can help your symptoms of endometriosis if your symptoms were mainly around your time of the month, your period. Because when you remove the uterus, you stop having periods, like you're not bleeding anymore. So you're not having those symptoms. Now, if you're having symptoms throughout the whole month, like I do, then no, having a hysterectomy is not going to cure that. Not only that, to sit there and say, why can't you just have a hysterectomy to someone who is struggling with fertility, it's just like wrong in itself, because it's very hard for people that want to have kids and they're struggling with that. But just know that a hysterectomy is not a cure for endometriosis. If you say you have endometriosis and you had a hysterectomy and you said, oh, it cured me because I don't have pain anymore, it could be because either one, maybe you didn't have endometriosis, maybe you had adenomyosis, which is on the inside of the uterus. And it's very similar. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of like the sister condition to endo. And if you have a hysterectomy, that is a cure for adenomyosis because it was on the inside of the uterus. So that would make sense. But just know that no, hysterectomy is not a cure for endometriosis. It may help your symptoms, but it's not going to get rid of the condition. So, to my story, my personal story, how long have I suffered from endometriosis? I have had painful periods pretty much my whole life since I first got my period. I got my period when I was 9 years old. Yes, you heard that right. I was 9 years old when I got my very first period. When I was a teenager, I would often, every single time I had a period, be staying home from school because it was so incredibly painful. The cramps were so severe. And I would be laying on the couch. I'd have my feet propped up on pillows. My mom would be calling the nurse. She is screaming like crazy. I don't know what to do. And all the nurse would say was prop up her feet on a pillow, give her some Tylenol or ibuprofen, and they wouldn't really do much at all. And they didn't question it either. And that is one of the main signs of endometriosis, is extremely painful periods. And I just remember my mom making jokes all the time and basically saying, you sound like you're in labor, and like literally that's what I sounded like. I was screaming so loud. In 2015, I started experiencing what I would call flare-ups. I used to think they were IBS related. I would basically get lower stomach pain that was super severe. I would literally start shaking all over. And I would start vomiting, and I'm not talking about just like a little throwing up here and there. It was massive, like vomiting. And I would spend hours dealing with this pain. I would spend like 3 hours in the bathroom. It would put me down the whole entire day. I felt drained afterwards, and it was just so miserable. Most painful thing I've ever dealt with, alongside kidney stones, which I've had those, and those are miserable. I remember one time we were living with my husband's mom, and it got so bad, and I was so burnt out on dealing with this pain and not knowing what was wrong with me. I was like, I need to go to the emergency room right now. And so we ended up going to the emergency room. Of course, by the time I got there, my pain had stopped and I felt like a normal human being. That's the funny part, is once it stopped, I just like feel normal again, other than being tired, sometimes a little nauseous. But I got there and it stopped. They went ahead and did a CAT scan. They didn't find anything. I was then told to see my gastroenterologist, which I didn't end up doing until much later, I think like probably 3 years later, because I didn't have a gastroenterologist. And I think I had health insurance, but I'm not sure if I did or not at that point. And the emergency room told me they thought it was IBS because that's what it sounded like to them. In 2018, I ended up seeing a gastro doctor. I set up an appointment. I went in there, I had my appointment. I told them what my symptoms were. They told me it sounded like IBS again. And then they ended up doing an upper endoscopy and a colonoscopy. And they didn't find anything except for there was another test they did. I think it was an ultrasound before that. They said they found a benign liver tumor, but other than that, they didn't find anything. They told me it was IBS, and that's what I had. So I believed it for the longest time. In 2021, after many people telling me they think I have endometriosis and having doctors tell me that I don't have endometriosis, and the pain was just getting much, much worse to the point where I just didn't want to be around anymore. I was becoming very, very terrified of my periods because they were just getting so incredibly severe, and I was just terrified. And so I ended up going and seeing an OBGYN and pushed for a laparoscopy because I wanted answers. The first OBGYN that I saw, first doctor I saw, she didn't want to go that route. She wanted to do all this other stuff, and we'll do the surgery as the last resort. And I was completely done. I was like, no way. I want to have the surgery because if you know anything about endometriosis, and if you don't, the only way to truly diagnose and confirm that you have this condition is through surgery. Like, you can have an ultrasound, you can have an MRI, you can do all this other stuff. And yeah, sometimes it may show, or signs of it might show on those tests, but that's not always the case. I never had an MRI, but I've had 2 or 3 ultrasounds, and every single time it has not showed anything. Other than recently, in the last year or two, I found out I had fibroids as well, or at least one fibroid that showed up on that test. But other than that, endometriosis did not show on that test at all. So after 2 rescheduled surgeries, let me go back. So the first OBGYN that I saw was pretty much refused to do the surgery. And then I really pushed for it. And she kept asking me, well, what's more important? Relief of your pain and getting answers, or getting pregnant? Like, lady, goes hand in hand. Like, especially if I have endometriosis. Endometriosis gives you severe pain, and it also causes you to have a hard time getting pregnant. So they go hand in hand, and I want both, not one or the other. So she finally ended up scheduling the appointment, the surgery, and I decided to back out the last second because I did not want her doing my surgery because I did not trust her as a doctor. And so it's like, no, this surgery is very serious. I want someone that knows what they're doing. I want someone that is willing to do the surgery and not like fight with me over it. So I ended up seeing another OBGYN, and had an appointment with her. She scheduled my surgery right away. Not the best experience in the world, just because I found out when I saw my new doctor for my upcoming surgery that's in April, I found out that she apparently didn't do the surgery she said she did, the previous doctor. She had told me it was part excision and part ablation, and she wanted to meet with me to discuss like what exactly she did. She couldn't just tell me. It was just like really weird. But come to find out that she didn't do ablation and excision. It was full-on ablation, which I've heard is not the gold standard for this type of condition and surgery, is that you have to have excision surgery. You want to actually go in there and the doctor has to like cut out the endometriosis. Not saying it won't come back. It still could come back, but you'll have better relief most of the time and it will stay gone longer most of the time, rather than going in there and just burning it, because you're not getting down to the root of the problem. You're just burning off the top. So in 2021, I was diagnosed with stage 1 endometriosis. I did pretty good for 3 or 4 years until now, which is starting to get bad again. However, after my first surgery, within a couple months, my pelvic pain came back, and within 5 or 6 months, I think it started, like, the bleeding started to get a little bit heavier, but it wasn't like crazy. I didn't get like the really crazy symptoms that I was getting until like now. It's like starting to come back. But yeah, the pelvic pain definitely only stayed gone for a couple of months. And so that's what I'm dealing with right now in that. And like I said, next surgery is scheduled for April 15th, 2025. I'm going to be having an excision surgery with Melissa Pendergrass, which I hear is a very, very good doctor. She's very knowledgeable. She knows a lot about endometriosis, and she doesn't believe in ablation. So you're probably wondering, what symptoms am I actually experiencing? Like, I talked about the symptoms of endometriosis, but what were my personal symptoms? And so these are my personal symptoms. Now, these are all of ones that I'm literally having right now. Some of these symptoms didn't start until later on. And I just thought of another one I can add on here. I want to add it so I don't forget. But painful periods is definitely one on my list. So painful periods with severe cramps. Sometimes medication doesn't work at all. Like I said before, I would take hydrocodone and it wouldn't even touch my pain. Sometimes I'd have to take 2 for it to work, and then other times I would take 2 and it wouldn't work at all. Pain with intimacy occasionally, but not every single time. However, I am noticing that it's starting to become more and more lately, which really sucks. Excessive heavy bleeding during my period, trouble getting pregnant, which I've mentioned. Endo flares, so that's where I described it as like severe lower stomach pain, shaking, nausea, and I used to throw up from it, but now I haven't thrown up from a flare-up in probably a few years now. So at least that is good. I don't know why that changed, to be honest with you. It just stopped out of nowhere. Fatigue, diarrhea and constipation, bloating, nausea, rectal pain and pressure, which when it comes to like rectal pain, I also get pain in the other area. It feels like shooting pain, and what they call it is lightning crotch. Funny term, but it basically feels like someone is zapping you in the rectum or in the other areas, and it's very uncomfortable. Another symptom that I have been getting the last few days is just pain down my legs. Like I'll get shooting pain down my inner part of my thigh coming from my pelvis. It really sucks. Severe pelvic pain feels like someone's stabbing you with a knife in your pelvis over and over again. Uterus cramps throughout the whole month. And then the other thing that I wanted to add to this is that I don't get it all the time, but sometimes I'll get like a burning sensation in my uterus. And it's like it's really uncomfortable. And to top it off, I also have pelvic floor dysfunction. My current doctor that's going to be doing my surgery in April checked everything and kind of felt around, and she said that my pelvic floor is a complete mess. It's super tight, and she thinks it's the reason why that I'm getting constant pelvic pain. I'm getting cramping in my pelvis. I'm pretty sure the burning sensation probably has something to do with that, and it really sucks. I have to go and see my chiropractor pretty often so that I can feel better. And then on top of that, if I touch like my hip on this side, I forgot what muscle it is, but if I press in a certain area on both sides of my hips, it's very painful and it hurts. And if I'm like laying in bed and I'm laying on my side, I can't do it for very long because it starts hurting. Or if my husband is like leaning on me and he leans on that area, it hurts so bad, which my chiropractor said is my pelvic floor. So definitely a complete mess when it comes to that. So the last thing I wanted to go over is how I'm managing my endometriosis. I'm managing it the best that I can. I get symptoms all the time. Right now, I'm okay other than having the hip pain, but I'm doing okay. Like I'm not getting the nausea. I haven't got the pelvic pain today. The last couple of days I was getting pelvic pain like all day long, and now it's like nothing. So anytime I'm in severe pain, like during my periods, or I'm just dealing with severe endo pain, I'm actually taking a tincture that has CBD and THC in it. It's a equal amount. So I take just a little bit of that, like 0.25, I think it's like milliliters. I can't remember. And so I'll take a little bit of that, and it really helps because get your minds off thing, and it helps you fall asleep as well. So I ended up resorting to that because strong medication wasn't really working. And then when I tried to talk to my doctor about getting on more of the hydrocodone, because sometimes it does work, she wanted to meet with me about pain management. And so I don't think she was too keen on letting me have that. And I was like, you know what? My state, it's legal recreationally. So I might as well try it, because a lot of people in the endo communities say that it helps their pain with their endo. So I decided to try it, and it works. It definitely does. If I'm in very severe pain and I know I'm going to be in bed all day, then I'll take a little bit, and it just puts me right to sleep and takes away my pain. Sometimes I do have to take like Advil or like Tylenol with it if the pain is super, super severe and I need something to work like right away. Then I will do that. And then using my heating pad and just trying to take it easy and relax when I need to. Been trying to do some pelvic floor stretches and stuff like that, and trying to watch what I eat, but sometimes it's just really hard. But doing an anti-inflammatory diet is probably like the best diet for me because of the inflammation that I have in my body, not just from endometriosis, but from back pain and neck pain. And I have a bad back and neck, and having pelvic floor dysfunction causes inflammation in your body. Dealing with that is, it's really, really tough. And And then, like I said, I have my next surgery, excision surgery, April 15th, 2025. And I going to go through that. And then after surgery, after I heal up, my doctor wants me to go to pelvic floor therapy so I can get that under control because it's causing a lot of my symptoms. She thinks that pelvic pain, the cramping throughout the month that feels like period cramps but isn't, all of those symptoms she believes has to do with my pelvic floor. And not only that, but my poor pelvic floor is also throwing my back out sooner. So I'm having to go into the chiropractor way more often, which really sucks because, you know, it's a lot of money to have to keep going back and back and back, and it's racking up the bills. So yeah, that's my story with endometriosis. Let me know down below if you struggle with endometriosis too, and let me know if this video was helpful for you, and I will see you guys in my next video.